and welcome to another Hayley-Roxanna crafts video. In this video I'm going to show you how to turn your finished cross stitch into a cushion cover like this one, my Seasons of Gnome Cushion. This is one of my own designs. The charts and instructions for making this are available in my Hayley-Roxanna Designs online shops, which I've popped a link to in the video descriptions below. So there are many ways that you can make cushion covers, but in this video I'm going to show you how I make an envelope cushion cover like this one. So the finished cross stitch I'm making into a cushion cover is this Mickey Mouse cross stitch. This obviously isn't one of my own designs. It's from the Disney Cross Stitch magazine by Hachette Partworks. Which if you follow me on TikTok you'll have seen me working on this cross stitch. When choosing a design to make into a cushion cover, you need to make sure that the finished design will fit your chosen cushion size. So I knew when I chose to make this design I wanted the finished cushion to fit a 41cm cushion pad like this. So I checked that the finished design was going to be just slightly smaller than this size, just to allow for a border around it, as I think this just helps finish off the cushion. Near me, the most commonly available cushion pads seem to be either 41cm or 46cm square. So as I go through this video I will try and give the measurements to make covers for these sizes, and I will pop boxes just in the corner of the screen just with all the measurements on, and I will try and give the measurements in inches and centimetres. I will also try to explain how you can calculate your measurements if you are using a different sized cushion pad. So the first fabric that you need to cut for making your cushion cover is the fabric that you're actually going to do your cross stitching on. So in my case I've used Aida fabric, but you could use even weave or a linen fabric, personal preference as to what you want to use. So this fabric needs to be the size of the cushion pad that you are using, plus 3 centimetres or 1.5 inches to allow for a seam allowance when you're sewing all your bits of the cover together. So for this cross stitch, as the cushion pad I am using is a 41cm cushion pad, the Aida fabric that I have stitched on is 44cm by 44cm. I did put masking tape around this fabric when I was stitching the design, but I have now removed that, and I have washed and ironed this cross stitch so that it is ready for making into the cushion cover. At this point, if you wanted to cover the back of your cross stitch, then you would need to now before making the rest of the cushion. It's sort of personal preference whether you do this or not. You can use sort of an iron-on interfacing to cover it, or even just some plain fabric to sew over the back. But like I said, it's kind of a personal preference thing. I won't be covering the back of mine because one, it's inside the cushion cover anyway, and two, the cushion pad I'm using is white like the Aida fabric so that it won't show through. If I had used maybe a darker Aida fabric, then I might have wanted to cover the back so that the white of the cushion pad doesn't show through the fabric once the cushion cover is stitched together. So now we need to prepare the fabric for the back of the cushion cover. So this is the material that I have chosen to use. The main fabric that I want to use isn't actually large enough to get the 2 rectangles that I will need for the back out of it. So I'm actually going to join a bit of the red and the green onto them to get the sizes of rectangles that I actually need. It probably would be easier to either buy a single piece of fabric that is large enough to make both rectangles out of, or alternatively use 2 different back quarters or smaller pieces of fabric, like I did on the gnome cushion. So you can get your 2 rectangles from that. So for the top rectangle, you need the fabric to be the same width as your Ada fabric or whatever you use for the front of your cushion, but with a height that's half the height of the front fabric, plus 7 centimetres or 3 inches. And then for the bottom rectangle, you need the fabric the same width as the front fabric again, but with a height half the height of the front fabric, plus either 12 centimetres or 5 inches. The reason that you need to add on the extra inches is to allow for this little overlap to make the envelope cushion, and also to allow for seam allowances. So I'm actually going to go and prepare my material to make the rectangles for the back off camera, and then I'll come back and go through the exact measurements that I've used for my 41 centimetre cushion pad, just to go over the measurement bit again to hopefully make it clearer for you. I will also make sure that I iron this fabric before I start cutting it, just because that's a better thing to do. So these are the 2 rectangles for the back of the cushion cover. This is the top one. You can see where I've had to join that extra piece on to make sure it's the right size. So this is 44 centimetres wide, like the Ada fabric that I've used for the front of the cushion cover. And the height is 29 centimetres, which is half the height of the Ada fabric plus 7 centimetres. And as you can see, I've also given the measurements if you were using a 46 centimetre cushion pad, just in the little box I've popped up on the screen. And this is the bottom rectangle. Again, I've just had to join the 2 pieces of fabric together to make mine the right size. So again, this is 44 centimetres wide, like the Ada fabric for the front. And the height this time is 34 centimetres, which is half the height of the Ada fabric plus 12 centimetres. And again, the measurements that you'd need if you were using a 46 centimetre cushion pad are just in the box in the corner of the screen. So now we've cut all the fabric for making the cushion cover, we need to start putting the cushion cover together. But before we do this, we do need to just hem the edges that are going to be seen once the cushion cover's made. So if I take my gnome cushion and flip it over, you can see that on the back, the top rectangle, I've put a hem on the bottom of it, and the bottom rectangle, I've put a hem at the top. This is just to neaten those edges that will still be seen, especially this one, once your cover's made. Okay, it's quite straightforward to do this. So I've got my top rectangle here. If you are using a patterned material, you need to make sure that you've got it the right way up before you decide where the bottom is, so that when you've actually put the cushion cover together, the front and the back are the same way. I mean, if they weren't, it wouldn't really matter, but just for a aesthetically pleasing thing, it's nice to have them both the same way. So this is the way up. So this is the bottom edge of that top rectangle. Now, because I've got the red panel there, that will help me remember which is the bottom edge when I just flip my material over to make this hem. Now, all you're going to do to make your hem is just fold this top bit over by 1 centimetre approximately. Okay, about 1 centimetre twice, like so. Okay, and then just pin that in place, ready to sew down. To make this a bit easier to do and to make the edges crisper, as you fold it over by 1 centimetre, it's worth just ironing along the edge. And then when you do the 2nd centimetre, iron it again, and that will just help keep it nice and flat for when you're stitching it together. So if I show you on the bottom panel, as I've got to the bottom rectangle, I've got that one all ready to sew. And as you can see, I ironed along it. So this is the top edge of my bottom rectangle. And I ironed along it as I was folding it over and popping the pins in, just to hold it in place while I stitch. If I bring that up a bit closer to the camera so you can see, it does give that nice crisper edge. Okay. Now to sew this together, I've taken just some ordinary sewing thread and I have threaded it up into a sewing needle, and I've done it so that it's doubled over and I've got a loop in the end that's not in the needle. And this is just because I'm going to do a loop start to secure the thread at the beginning of stitching. So if I take the rectangle, hold it up as best I can for you to see what I'm doing. I'm just using green thread because of the green material, because really you want the thread to sort of blend in at this point, because you are going to be able to see these edges. So I start by just popping the needle in as near to the edge as I can, like so. Pull that down. Don't pull it all the way through because you haven't secured it yet. And then you're just going to come up just a small way along. Okay, not too far at all. You want it quite near where you stitch. It's just a little bit awkward to do, trying to show you on camera as well. Pull that through, and then as you pull through, just catch that loop at the end of the thread before you finish pulling it through, and that will just secure the thread at the beginning. And then all I'm going to do is a running stitch all the way along this edge just to hold the hem in place. Okay, so your running stitch, you're literally just going up and down through your material. It's a bit awkward to show you. You want to try and keep it as near to the edge of the hem as you can to keep it as neat as possible. I sometimes just take the needle through a few times if I can, and then just pull that through, okay, to make the running stitch. It's a bit awkward to show you on camera, so it's not very tidy. I can't do it tidier because I have chosen to stitch this by hand. You could use a sewing machine and just run along that with a straight stitch on your sewing machine, just as easy. So I'm now going to go and stitch these two hems, and then I'll come back to show you how to put the cushion cover together. So here is the bottom rectangle with the hem completed along the top edge. See, just did that little running stitch all the way along, like so. And then the top rectangle I've got here, and I just need to finish it off. I've done my running stitch all the way along. It's just the finishing off to do, which I thought I'd show you how I do. So once I've done the last of the running stitches, I just pop my thread sort of between the two parts of the hem, and then you just want to pop your needle. It's very difficult to show, but if you can just catch a previous thread like that, take the thread, wind it round the end of the needle like so, and then just pull the needle through, and that will just knot that thread in place. And then you just want to run your needle down the hem to trap the end in, pass it out, and where you pull it out, just pull that through, and then you can just snip that thread off, and that's that hem completed as well. So now I'm ready to join all the pieces of this cushion cover together. So I start by laying the top rectangle right side up on a flat surface, and then I'm going to take my finished cross stitch and place that right side down so that the back of the cross stitch can be seen at the moment, and then just line that up to that top rectangle like so. And once I'm happy with the positioning, I will then pin it in place just using some ordinary pins, dressmaking pins, just to hold it in place while I stitch it all together. To make sure that the cross stitch is in the centre of the cushion, I've actually calculated how many squares away from the design I need to stitch my hem to allow for that seam allowance and to make sure this is in the centre. So for this design, it's 16 squares, so I will count that to put the pins in. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and pop a pin in there. And do the same on the sides. 16, and pop a pin into there, like so. And then I just need to do one on the other side. I'll just move it this way a bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 16, and pop a pin into there. Okay, you may want to pop a few more pins in than that just to make sure it's holding in place. So I will pop another one along the top, try and get it into line with the pins that are already there. It just helps with stitching it if your pins are in line, to make sure you stitch straight. One there. And now we need to attach the bottom rectangle so it can all be stitched together. So if I grab the bottom rectangle, just move that out the way a minute. I'll pop my bottom rectangle down again, face up, like so. Take the cross stitch that's got the top rectangle already attached to it, and now line up the bottom edges like so. You need to make sure that your top rectangle is still flat. It's a little bit fiddly to do. And then again, pin round that the same distance from the design to make sure that that design stays in the centre. And then I will thread up some sewing thread and I will show you how I stitch it. So I have pinned all the pieces of fabric together all the way around, making sure that that design is in the centre so that it will be in the centre of the cushion. I have threaded a needle. I'm using green just because it's easier for you to be able to see what I'm stitching, but you could use just white. Doesn't really matter because you can't see the thread once you've joined everything together. And I've threaded it up again with that loop so I can do a loop start. And I'm going to take this and start stitching it. I'll just show you a little bit and then I'll finish it off without the camera on. So I'm going to start just there. You can literally start anywhere you want around the outside. You are going to stitch around the whole entire outside. So like I did when I was stitching that hem, I just thread my needle through, pull it down a little way. This is just a bit awkward on camera. It's a lot easier when you're doing it without having to try and film yourself at the same time. And then you come back up through the fabric and make sure you catch that loop end so you don't pull the thread all the way through. And then I'm just going to do a running stitch again all the way around. So you're just going to go up and down like so, and you just remove the pins as you get to them. I like to use the squares of the Ada fabric to help keep my stitches nice and even, and I tend to just alternate going up and down through the holes because again I am hand stitching it. You could just as well do this by stitching using a sewing machine. There's my first few stitches just to show you, and I will continue this, put that one in, continue that all the way around all sides of the cushion cover to join everything together. And once I've done that, I will come back to show you what the next step is. So I've now sewn all the pieces together. I'll just bring it up. You can see I've got the running stitch going all the way around to hold everything together. So the next thing I need to do is I just need to trim the corners so that when I turn it the right way, it's not too bulky at the corners. So I'm just going to show you how I do that. I literally just take the scissors and cut on a diagonal, making sure that you don't cut too close to the stitching around the edge, because you don't want to go and accidentally cut through that. And I will do that on all 4 corners. Once that's done, at this point you can, if you want to make sure that the material doesn't fray at all on the edges, just either blanket stitch by hand, or use like an overlocking stitch or a zigzag stitch if you're using a machine stitcher, to just make sure your edges don't fray. This is a personal preference thing. I'm actually going to blanket stitch around the edge of this one, purely because this is a cushion cover that may get taken on and off the cushion pads, so it'll just help to protect the edges a bit. If you want to see how to blanket stitch, I did show that in my video on an idea for storing finished cross stitch. So once I've cut my 4 corners, blanket stitch around the edge, I will then show you how we turn the cushion cover the right way round and put the cushion pad in. So the cushion cover is now all stitched together. I've used the running stitch to join all the pieces, and then the blanket stitch on the edges. You can see it's all done. Like I said, you could use a sewing machine to do all the stitching of it together, using like a straight stitch instead of the running stitch, and maybe like a overlocking stitch or a zigzag stitch to do the edge if you want to do the edge. Like I said, this bit isn't compulsory, it's a personal preference. So now we're going to turn the cushion cover the right way. I will do my best to show you how I do this. It's just a little bit awkward on camera. So what I like to try to do is pop my hands inside, pull it through 1/2, and you want to try and get the corners out as much as you can. Push your fingers right into those corners to turn them over, like so, and then just do the top half. And again, push your fingers up into the corner. Get the corners as sharp as you can. Push up into that corner. Like so. There we go. Cushion cover's now the right way. What I'm going to do now is just iron it on the back, because you don't want to iron your cross stitching on the front because you'll flatten it, but just from the back of it, I will put an iron over that to press it, just to make these seams that little bit like crisper and cleaner before I put the cushion pad in. So I'll just go and do that, and then we'll put the cushion pad in. So I have ironed the cushion cover from the back, just to crisp up those seams, and now we need to pop the cushion pad inside. Again, this is going to be a little bit fiddly to show on camera, but I will do my best. You have to turn the top over slightly, with it being the envelope cushion, just so you can get to this bottom part, and then take your cushion pad, push it inside like so, push it down into those corners, and then you just got to fold the top part of the cushion cover over the top of the cushion pad, like so. Push it in, just smooth everything out, pull everything straight, like so, and there you go. The cushion pad is now inside your cushion cover. And it's all done. So that's how to make a finished cross stitch into an envelope cushion cover. I'll pop links to any items that I have used in this video below. And if you've got any questions, just stick them in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!